So I want to talk about another issue. And it's the recent invasion of Ceuta. Reading from the BBC, Sophia Ferrara-Santos and Sarah Rainsford are the authors of the article. And they talk about Spain's Prime Minister has blamed trafficking gangs after about 60,000 migrants crossed into the Spanish North African enclave of Ceuta from Morocco. At least 56 people died during the surge, according to local media. Pedro Sanchez called the incident a violation of Spain's territorial integrity. Italy has responded by suspending the EU's border-free Schengen arrangements with Spain. The influx comes after Spain's Supreme Court ruled that migrants stopped at sea while trying to reach Ceuta or Melilla after another enclave cannot be summarily returned to Morocco. Now, as of Friday evening, more than 48,000 people had voluntarily returned to Morocco, Spanish officials said. One man told Reuters news agency he was going back, adding, "It's not good at all, and it's not fun either. I mean, people are dying here. I beg you, please, if you haven't come yet, don't come, don't do it." Ceuta on the North African coast is separated from the mainland of Spain by the Strait of Gibraltar. It has long been a focal point of migrants attempting to reach Europe during the summer months, where it is often a big push to reach Ceuta, typically organised over social media. Coveted by Morocco, Ceuta and another Spanish enclave, Melilla, have long been a flashpoint in diplomatic relations between the two countries. They form the European Union's only land border with Africa. Now, I want to talk about this issue.
I want to talk about the pronunciation.
I'll talk about pronunciation afterwards. Yeah? So, in terms of this issue, it demonstrates to us the complete failure of the EU, either to tackle human trafficking gangs, or to defend its borders, or to protect its citizens. And Spanish citizens, subjects of the Crown of Spain, need to be asking themselves questions about whether being in the EU is at all beneficial. Because when the EU fails to protect you, it's failing in the first principle of any government. And for too long, liberal progressive governments across the West have allowed their immigration policies to be dictated to by criminals, rather than simply cutting off the social and economic drivers to the human trafficking engine. And that is, you need to have operations of immediate return back to the countries of origin. And you need to have penalizing systems for those that won't admit where they come from. And we need to change international law and treaty that currently prevents us from testing in court the refugee claims of those who claim to be refugees. Because the moment they say that they're a refugee, they are immediately protected from criminal prosecution, even if they enter the country illegally, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I want to tackle the question of colonialism. Ceuta and Melilla are not Spanish colonies in Morocco. They were Spanish territories before Morocco was even a country. They were Spanish territories from the 1400s. Morocco wasn't a country until, I think, in the 18 or even 1900s. It is the job of every government to secure its borders and protect its citizens. And there is no other way of describing the forced entry of 60,000 people into your country as anything other than an invasion, and is anything other than a failure to protect your citizens. 60 odd people, including Spanish subjects of the crown, died because of this invasion, and Spain failed to protect them. Every one of those Spanish families must receive compensation for what the crown failed to do. And it failed to protect them because of this liberal politics that says that pushing refugees out or defending your borders is somehow anti-liberal. But then notice what happened in the Spanish response. The Spanish sent its army into Ceuta and into Melilla to push the invasion out. 47,000 people were pushed out by the Spanish military. The BBC says they voluntarily left. They didn't voluntarily leave. They had nowhere to go, and the army was clamping down. They were moved out, which means something. If Spain can use its army to push invasions of thousands of illegal migrants out of Ceuta, then the British Navy can be used to stop boats crossing the English Channel. I want to call on Spanish Christians to get behind of a Spanexit. I don't know how to conjugate that. Maybe a Espanexit. I don't know how to do that in Spanish either. But basically, Christians in Spain, you need to be asking yourself the question, is being in the EU helping or harming the Catholic integrity of Spain? And if it is harming the Christian integrity of Spain, then it is time to start an exit movement in Spain. We need to tear up the international treaties that are meaning that we can't deal with clearly criminal entry into the UK. International treaties that were formed at the back end of the World War II as part of the international liberal consensus are no longer fit for purpose in dealing with the current migrant crisis. Those laws need to be changed, as Suella Braverman has called for them to be so when she was Home Secretary. Now, any questions on that before I move on in my presentation?
What about King Charles? What do you think of him?
So, a lot of people mistakenly think that King Charles has something to do with this situation that we're going through in the UK. He doesn't. King Charles has no constitutional power whatsoever to deal with any of the problems that we face. And if you're saying, well, what is King Charles doing about it? Then you need to read the British Constitution. King Charles can do nothing about it. Let me talk about what a Christian migration policy would be organized by. What are the axioms of a Christian migration policy? An axiom is a principle of organization. So axiom number one to a Christian migration policy is the imago Dei, that all men, all women, regardless of their race, regardless of their religion, are made in the image of God, and that gives them an equal dignity before God and before law. That means that it cannot be that Christians should come up with immigration policies that discriminate on the basis of someone's ethnicity or colour of skin. That just is not possible. Or even on an immigration policy connected to their tribe. The second axiom is the order amoris. This is the idea that we organize our society according to the principle of love, and that the principle of love cascades outwards from those that are closest to you. So those that are closest to us as English Christians, as British Christians, are obviously firstly the descendants of Britain that have gone abroad. Afrikaans from Britain, Americans from Britain, Canadians from Britain, Australians from Britain. Those that are closest to us are those that have been formed by us through the colonial system, like those countries in the Caribbean. We should have a preferential system that starts by seeking immigration from amongst those communities when it is needed to aid and better help the society that exists here and the needs of this country. But of course there must be a filter based upon those that are closest to our heritage in terms of religion. So a Jamaican Christian practicing is closer to us than a Jamaican Muslim practicing or atheist practicing. A Canadian Christian from English descent is closer to us than a Canadian atheist of English descent, because the Christian brings back to us our same Christian values. The order amores means that when there is a need to fulfill in our immigration policy, we first try to fill it by those who are closest to us in every way. And then if you cannot fill the need by recruiting from those groups, you start to find groups that are adjacently closer, and then adjacently closer again, and adjacently closer again, until you fill the need that you have. Secondly, an axiom of the order of immigration policy should be subsidiarity. The idea that the decisions that impact a community should be made as closely as the people that it impacts. So local councils should first try to fill the skills needs that they have and be empowered to fill the skills needs that they have. Let me finish and I'll take questions. The skills needs that they have from local community, and then if they fail, they should try to put out advertisements nationally. And then if that fails, they send a quota to the British government saying we need 30 nurses from abroad. And each city tries to fill its needs, first locally, then regionally, then nationally, and only then does it give the government a request for migrants, which the government then tries to fill by the order amores aforementioned and explained. And it is the duty of the local government to integrate the migrants into the local community who have been selected upon the basis that they can integrate. That means, ladies and gentlemen, that a Christian from the Bahamas who knows English and is a Christian can more easily integrate into England if he is a member of the Salvation Army than a Romanian immigrant who is also a Christian who can't speak English if he is an Orthodox Christian. And this is how the order amores works. And then after you've factored in all of these things, then you ask the question about the skills and the abilities. Finally, the final axiom of a Christian immigration policy, before I take questions, is the concept of oikos, of home. And that is the idea, ladies and gentlemen, that you organize locally your Christian community. The first Christian community is the family. That is the basic unit of a Christian civilization. The second unit of a Christian civilization is a congregation. The third unit of a Christian civilization is a diocese, and a collection of dioceses if they are in a city bigger than a diocese. A diocese is a number of congregations under a single bishop. And ladies and gentlemen, it should be in an outbuilding outward that we work to build our society by strengthening first the family, then by strengthening the local congregations, then by strengthening the local groups of congregations, then the city spirit, then the regional spirit, and then the national spirit. Any questions about the question of Christianity and immigration?
Do you believe?
Can I get more water, JC?
Do you believe?
Because your voice is fine. I'm not doing anything. No, I don't. It's fine.
Do you believe Nigel Farage, Benny and
Rupert Lowe.
Benny
Rupert Lowe.
Rupert Lowe? They should all get together.
Right, ladies and gentlemen. Should Rupert Lowe, Ben Habib, and Nigel Farage all get together? That's not a question about the topic. So when I take general questions at the end, I'll answer that question. But just for your satisfaction, short answer yes. But I would want Ben Habib, Nigel Farage, and Rupert Lowe to organise their immigration policy by Christian principles and not by any other value system. Any other. Let someone else ask a question, madam. Do you want to come in and have a conversation on camera? Then let someone else ask a question. Go on, sir. On the topic of...
If you organise it by Christian principles,
Yeah.
you would let everyone in.
Right. So this is the kind... I'm not saying you are an ethno-nationalist, sir, but this is the kind of...
I don't know what that means.
Right. This is the kind...
Fucking words.
So this is the kind of troll that I received by Mark Collette, the ethno-nationalist who I debated 2 nights ago on my channel, Bobber's Speaker's Corner, which is my only channel that I'm supported from. Right. This kind of troll, this kind of argument or misunderstanding, sir, is based... I know. Sir, if you let me answer your question. This kind of argument is based on a misunderstanding of what I've just said. Because if you had listened, sir, I was clearly discriminating in my immigration policy. Clearly saying it should not be a free-for-all, that it should not be an open door, and it should be based upon the needs of the country, not upon the demands of criminal gangs or of the immigrant abroad. So this is a total misrepresentation of what I've just said. Would you like to debate? Right, any other questions?
I can't debate.
You can either come and debate or let someone else ask a question. Any other questions, ladies and gentlemen?
No questions.
Go on.
What's that thing about?
God bless you, sister. Can't hear you.
How could you reintroduce Christian songs into popular culture?
Well, one of the ways that we need to reintroduce popular Christian songs into culture is we need to have public acts of worship in our schools. I believe that the Christian state should have a public act of worship in every school, but it should be optional, i.e., Children shouldn't be forced to go to it, but Christians should be allowed to go to it, and it should be facilitated, and it shouldn't be run by just anybody. It should be run by a youth pastor that the local churches nearest the school says is most effective as a youth pastor. Secondly, Christian songs should be played on the radio. Christian worship songs that are popular in the Christian charts should be played as part of secular music and put into the mix of secular music. So those are two ways that I would reintroduce them. Any other questions on any aspect of the Christian faith? Going once? Going twice? Going 3 times? Thank you very much for listening, ladies and gentlemen.
Bob, your channel,
It's Bob of Speaker's Corner.
and it's not so cool.
No, Soco Films is not my channel. Revelations 22 is not my channel. I'm not supported by those channels. We work together, but my only channel is Bob of Speaker's Corner.
Is it possible to ask you questions off camera?
You can stand there and ask questions off camera, but I'll be recorded in my answers. So do you want to stand behind the cameras and ask a question?
It's not actually for me, it's for my niece.
Well, what, just stand there and ask a question.
She wanted to get, if possible, lean on your experience of debating skills.
Do you want to stand there and ask your questions then? You're off camera, only, and I won't even hear your voice. Nothing will be captured, but just stand there.
It's easy for you because you're used to it, but it's kind of like a bit of a barrier.
Yeah. You're not going to be on camera.
It's a bit of a barrier, it's an imaginary barrier, but it's like...
Do you, this?
Can I just say something? Sorry for interrupting. I was speaking to some people over there, and they think it's their right to film, even if I don't give their consent.
Right.
And that they're applying UK law. So when you're asking them politely,
Not to film. Right, so here's what the law actually says. Brother, are you one? Okay, fair enough. Right, if there are no questions then, literally I was going to answer your question, but then you just started talking to someone else.
yeah, you can answer it.
Right, so the law actually, the Royal Parks law says there should be no filming in the Royal Parks. But basically it's not policed and it's not enforced because it can't be enforced, right? Because everyone on their phone is filming all the time, right? So there's no way for them to be stopped through the use of the law. But what you can do is you can complain to YouTube and ask YouTube to have the video taken down. So that's the way to do it. If someone's filmed you against your consent, take your complaint up with YouTube against the channel, and the YouTube might put strikes on the channel. That's the way to do it.
The thing is, not that I don't mind, but provided it's with my permission, that's it. But if they want to say they can't do it,
Fine, sure, okay.
anyway, like you've answered the question, YouTube.
Right,
I mean, like,
I got some questions to ask. Are you wanting to ask some questions? Last chance.
it was me forcing her. It's not her.
Well, I'll tell you what,
Yeah.
you've got my card.
Yeah.
Drop us an email, book us a Zoom call, and we'll talk on Zoom.
Oh, well, that's very kind.
Yeah? There you go.
Have a good day.
Right.